Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Democratic Caucus. May 6th, I think. We are going to try and move through this pretty quickly. We want to make sure everyone eats before their committee time. So I don't really have any announcements. And we are going to start with Wendy, who's talking about S63. So come on up.
Hoping this is friendly fire here. This is my first time.
Introduce yourself and where you represent.
Wendy Critchlow from Colchester, Vermont. I would be Chipman 19. And I'm from the healthcare department.
Committee.
Although I do work for Diva.
That's true.
Yeah. S63 is an act relating to modifying the regulatory duties of the Green Mountain Care Board. Just want to say that I find this one to be the baby of the mother that's coming later on. But I'm thinking that it's probably still going to get some pushback. But anyways, if you have questions, I'm not going to answer them, but it'll be great to have questions that I can anticipate coming at me. First two sections of this, sections 1 and 2, just eliminate some duties that the Green Mountain Care Board was doing before. It's mostly oversight and budgeting that are going to be shifting towards DIVA, and it's just for it's called Vital, which just is like a clearinghouse for information. What do we call that? The locks.
Information
technology
leaders.
Yes, leaders. Because they really don't have any business doing that, and they have more important things to do, which you will find out in a moment. Section 3 redistributes the board's funding formula because One Care is anticipated to be leaving at the end of 2025, and they were doing a build back budget to get some, like an 8% budget from the ACOs, which is the Accountable Care Organization. That's like the all care method. And that's going to be going away. So the 8% would be a crazy number. So they're not going to do that. And it just, if you look at the bill, it just redistributes who's paying for what. That'll fund the Green Mountain Care Board. And section 4 just lists the duties that are going away. Section 5 expands the scope of the ACOs and must be certified. Since One Care is going away, it's going to start streamlining the Medicaid only ACO certification because Green Mountain Care Board was not certified Medicare only, but it will have to put in some criteria for ACOs that do accept Medicaid and commercial insurance, and it'll establish some fees. That's what section 5 does. Section 6 and 7, it does amend fiscal year dates, just to kind of align. So there's the, what is it, the mental health will stay the same, correct? October.
Come on now.
Okay, come on up. Because I'm struggling here.
Is that that's the state hospital or Brattleboro?
The what?
Is it the section on Brattleboro?
Yes. So that's
Yeah, so currently the Green Mountain Care Board reviews hospital budgets on all 14 of our hospitals, and one of those is the Brattleboro Retreat. The Brattleboro Retreat happens to be on a different fiscal calendar year than the other hospitals. They go on a January through January, whereas all other hospitals. So when a few years ago, when they incorporated the Brattleboro Retreat into the hospital budget review, it was left as October, which is not very efficient since their budgets don't go into effect till January. So this is just realigning it and separating out predominant psychiatric care hospitals to a January date instead of the October date.
That's it.
That's it.
And probably the one that's going to be contested the most is the right to appeal. This is okay, I'm going to read this because it's really important. Section 7 was amended to say the Green Mountain Care Board's review, establishment and enforcement of hospital budgets should not be construed to be a contested case under the Administrative Procedures Act, but orders are subject to appeal under the Green Mountain Care Board's appeals statute, which the appeals to the Vermont Supreme Court. There was some language issues there. It eliminates the language directing orders and appeals to the Superior Court. This is an issue, so it clarifies the language. Okay. That's it, really. And Section 8 updates the statutes for meetings for the ACOs with Medicaid contracts because now they're going to have to report. They didn't have to do that before. Section 9 was repealed. Section 10 is the effective dates. This was voted out of our committee, 8-3-0, pretty much along party lines, although we did get one Republican to go along with us. And like I said, we'll probably get some pushback, but this is the baby one. Thank you.
We'll talk about the next one in a moment, but are there any questions on S63? It is going to Ways and Means today, so it'll be on the floor in a couple of days. So if you have questions, reach out to Wendy or Lisa or anyone on the committee.
Oh, good.
Great. All right, we're gonna stick with healthcare and do S-126.
Okay, the mother. So S-26 is the healthcare reform bill that came from the Senate. I'm going to start at the back of the bill because I think it flows a little bit better on what we're doing with this. And we have not done, I will just let you know, we have not done markup and final walkthrough on this bill. And there may be some other things that are still up for committee discussion that may end up in this bill that I'm not going to talk about yet today. So the first thing is there is a statewide healthcare delivery strategy. It was a plan, it's now a strategy. Essentially what we've done is we're tasking AHS, Agency of Human Services, to come up with a statewide strategy for healthcare. You know, what resources are needed, what services in what areas where we are lacking services, where services are being duplicated, and looking at the system as a whole. Currently, no one really looks at our whole healthcare system as a whole in the state. So Section 9 of the bill sets up a healthcare delivery advisory committee. It might be a steering committee at this point. I'm not sure where it will land as the verbiage of it. But it's all sorts of stakeholders working together to identify gaps in care, duplications of care, sort of the allocation of where our healthcare resources go. And then Agency of Human Services over the next year and a half, we've shortened the timeline. I'm not sure where the timeline's set at right now or how it will end up. But we have set AHS in collaboration with Green Mountain Care Board, the advisory committee, to come up with the statewide healthcare delivery strategy. Back to the front of the bill, for all of you who have been hearing all year about reference-based pricing, you're going to get your reference-based pricing. Currently, The Green Mountain Care Board has budget orders for hospitals where they do excess revenue or revenue. They cap the amount of revenue that hospitals can collect. So what we've done is we have changed it and have given express advice, orders to the Green Mountain Care Board to set the rates that hospitals can actually charge. Just FYI, the Green Mountain Care Board already has the authority to set rates. They have never done it before, and we are expressly in this bill ensuring that they start doing that. Reference-based pricing, if you don't know what that is, basically it takes a reference, and in most cases in this bill, we use Medicare as a reference. And then you base the amount, the rates that hospitals or providers can charge on that reference. So if Medicare's rate is $100 and you set the reference-based pricing to 150% of Medicare, that means that hospitals or providers would be allowed to charge up to $150 and no more than that. So we have set up where the Green Mountain Care Board will be working diligently, and they are enthusiastic to do this in consultation with others in setting up a mechanism of reference-based pricing for hospitals. There are a couple more sections in the bill that go into their current hospital budget filings or their hospital budget orders, gives them a little bit more duties around that. There's also a section where they will be able to monitor and receive information and look at the budgets of hospital networks, which we only have one. It defines what a hospital network is. They will not be able to have any sort of budget enforcement over networks. They will utilize a tool within their current budget enforcement mechanism within individual hospitals that are part of that network to enforce budget networks or hospital networks. But currently, just Green Mountain Care Board has no ability to be able to look at anything within the network. It's all strictly voluntary. So this gives them authority to be able to do that. And there's a lot of reporting in the bill, report back to the General Assembly. And other than that, that's where we are right now today. Hope is that we are spending all of today looking at a newly marked up version that Legislative Council has and hopefully voting it out today. And then it will go to appropriations.
Right.
Did I miss anything?
I gave the authority. Do you know if the bill gives the Green Mountain Care Authority additional resources or staffing to do this work?
There are appropriations for the Green Mountain Care Board as well to institute reference-based pricing and positions for reference-based pricing. And additionally, there is appropriations in the bill for the Agency of Human Services in order to develop the statewide healthcare delivery strategy.
Thank you.
And just to the money for the positions was in the Senate budget as passed by the Senate.
Question right here.
Thank you, Candace White of Waitsfield. And I just check here. So I'm excited about this bill. It sounds like you've got some great pieces in it. My question is regarding the statewide healthcare strategy. So I guess I'm looking for kind of some history. I'm assuming that there have been strategies put out in past legislative sessions. And I'm just wondering, is the committee taking a look at what has been proposed in the past and different variations of healthcare strategy reform? And kind of how does that inform this new requested strategy?
So we do currently have a TRAP, Health Resource Allocation Plan, which is within AHS. And they do update every I think it's 5 years, yeah. That has been in statute for quite some time now. And they're really sort of more of an advisory plan, but the statewide healthcare delivery strategy will take into account all the work that has previously been done in consultation with HRAP.
And we'll do 2 more questions.
Thank you, Alyssa. Chrissy Morris, Springfield. Curious about, if the local hospitals, they charge $2,000 for a CAT scan, and I don't know if that's reasonable or if that's exactly what they charge. But if they can go to out of state, and it's more, how is this reference-based pricing, would that compensate the out of state hospital at the rate that the Vermont hospital is being paid for? And then the balance would be.
No, we are not setting how much you can pay for things, because then that would be regulating the insurer and the payers. We don't regulate the payers on how much they can pay for something. We are strictly regulating how much, it would be regulating how much the hospitals would charge. And obviously, we have no ability to regulate hospitals outside of the state of Vermont. So if you went to, say, Dartmouth Hitchcock, they can charge whatever they want.
Thank you.
Carol Odie, Burlington. So I missed this part of the reference-based pricing. Is it the Green Mountain Care Board who will decide who can ask to be part of the reference-based pricing?
It's up to the Green Mountain Care Board to develop a system of reference-based pricing and to start rolling it out to hospitals as soon as practicable. Which hospitals they roll it out to, which charges they decide to reference. It's up to the Green Mountain Care Board to develop how to have a system of reference-based pricing as opposed in reference to what the statewide healthcare resource allocation strategy, statewide healthcare delivery strategy is. So we're not setting, and we're not telling them what to say. We're telling them to come up with a methodology.
So, but are they also going to determine, or how is it determined who can take part? What groups can say we want to be reference-based priced?
It is up to the Green Mountain Care Board in their authority over hospitals to determine who will be reference-based priced and who will not be reference-based priced. Taking into account the statewide healthcare delivery plan.
And would we then vote on that, or it's out of our hands?
That's out of our hands. That's within the Green Mountain Care Board's authority. It's currently in their authority now and has been since they were established in 2011.
Thanks.
All right, we'll do one
more question.
quick more question.
So very happy to hear a couple of pieces in the bill. One, giving the board some authority to reference-based pricing. I think it's very helpful to try to reduce our overall costs. And second, giving them the authority to take a look at health networks and how those have been constructed and whether they're in the public good. So thanks very much.
Oh, we love those types of
Yeah,
questions.
that was a good question.
Great, thank you, Alyssa. So follow the committee. If you have any questions, reach out to someone on the committee. We are now switching to wildlife. Larry on H230. Alyssa. Stretching both ways here.
So fireside puts represented from Randolph. So H230 is an act relating to the management of fish and wildlife. It was introduced at the request of the Fish and Wildlife Department. And the as introduced version of the bill is written by the department. First couple of sections concern fishing. Section 1 would create a free fishing weekend over Labor Day weekend. Section 2 would change the fees paid to Fish and Wildlife for fishing tournaments. The next two sections increase the penalties for certain big game violations, but also move most other violations from criminal to civil, keeping most violations out of our courts. The bill further restricts the taking of most reptiles and amphibians. These groups are not doing well. These animals have been declining worldwide for quite a number of years, and this bill will help keep them safe in Vermont. And this section will also prohibit the sale of pond slider turtles, which are an invasive species and a common pet. The next part of the bill will clarify that a person must obtain a permit from the Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife to import, transport into, transport within, possess reptiles and amphibians, and prohibits the use of wild animals for most commercial purposes, unless otherwise permitted. There are a number of permits for such commercial activity in statute currently. The bill also has sections that concern threatened and endangered species. These would amend the list of prohibited acts under the state's Threatened and Endangered Species Act to include the following. And this is in addition to a bunch of other prohibitions which are already in effect. It would prohibit the sale or offer for sale and interstate commerce of a threatened or endangered species. It would also not allow the delivery, receipt, carry, transport, or shipping of a threatened or endangered species in intrastate commerce, or import or export of a threatened and endangered species from Vermont. And the bill also allows the creation of a special list, a subset of our threatened and endangered species whose location data should remain controversial. For certain types of permitting, it can be made public knowledge where certain species are that are desirable for certain kinds of collectors. And this part of the bill would help keep the locations of those species more under wraps so they wouldn't be subject to being exploited in such a way. And then the final section of the bill, there has actually been a little bit of confusion out there. This would repeal a provision of statute that allows compensation to farmers who have suffered damage by deer or black bears. Currently, farmer who does not post, listen to this carefully because this is the part which is confusing. Currently, a farmer who does not post their land against hunting is entitled to reimbursement of up to $5,000 for crop and other damage caused by these critters. This provision of statute was enacted to incentivize farmers to refrain from posting their land to prohibit hunting. So said another way, it's not so much a law to help farmers as it is a law intended to expand hunting access. The committee heard that this law is seldom used, has not had the intended effect, and there are other much more appropriate means to mitigate the losses that farmers sustain with this kind of damage. And so, for example, we heard that during the 3-year period from 2022 to 2024, just 4 farmers used the program. And so Fish and Wildlife would really like to see this part of statute go away because the program just hasn't worked anything like it was intended to. And this bill would take effect in July 1 of this year.
Great. And what was the vote?
The vote was 9-1-1.
Great. We have time for probably one question. So Michelle, you're it. Or 2 questions.
Michelle Osland, Westminster. So when you say that this part will go away, are you talking about compensating farmers for bear and deer damage, or only in regard to if they don't post their land?
That's the section of law that would go away.
So they still
that's
will be
specific
compensated for damage from deer and bears?
only, not under this section of law. So there are other places other ways that farmers receive compensation for damage through insurance programs and other things. But there's this very sort of narrow provision that if farmers, decide to not host their land, they're entitled to certain compensation. And that's the part that would go away. And like I said, it's not as expansive as it sounds. Only 4 farmers actually use this provision in a 3-year period. And for 3 of those farmers, the amounts were very, very small. And then there was one farmer who got a lot of money in compensation. And that was actually part of the problem because they shouldn't have been entitled to that compensation under the law. There's something happened with the administration of the program that they were able to receive far in excess of what the law seemed to provide. And the committee wasn't able to actually get reasoning for why that actually happened, something with the administration of the program. And so if you were to take that one big payment out, we actually are down to 3 farmers over a 3-year period that made use of this program. And the program, it's a fish and wildlife program. It's not an ag program. So it requires resources from the department that they would just really rather put to other more targeted fish and wildlife programs.
All right, really the last question.
Thank you, Karen. Jonathan Newberg, the Educational District. My question actually might have just been addressed. Fish and Wildlife itself makes that payment out of there's an operational budget. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, it would come out of the Fish and Wildlife Department's budget. And that was one of their rationales for asking us to please make it go away because it gives them additional resources to do stuff which is more part of their formation.
Great. And it's on the floor, I believe, tomorrow, right? Maybe tomorrow?
It's on the notice.
It's on the notice now. Thursday. Okay, thank you. All right, we have Mark coming up for our last bill to talk about S-127, which is our housing bill in 5 minutes or less. So everyone can eat lunch. I don't want cranky caucus members.
S-120, I'm Mark Cahaly, Caucus, 5 minutes. S-127, we passed out of the House a housing bill. It's in the Senate now. The Senate has a housing bill, we've got it. And we've been coordinating with the Senate pretty well. So the Senate bill, what we've done, we've decided that the Senate bill is the vehicle. It's what we're working on. And the reason is that we needed help from other committees here. Specifically, the Commerce Committee spent several weeks really doing excellent work, creating a new tax increment financing device known as CHIPS. It came over from the Senate, but it needed a lot of work. They didn't have possession of the bill. We did, but they worked on the language, gave us the language, and we put it in the bill. Similarly, the Environment Committee had work to do. They gave us language, we put it in the bill. It's assembled, we passed it out, 10-1. Friday. It's now been just today been referred to Ways and Means will hear it from there, presumably if they let it out, it goes to approach. Then it comes to the floor. So my guess is not this week, next week, it will come to the floor. The bill, all the housing provisions, most of the housing provisions are similar to what they were. They fund housing programs or help them. There's some key studies, how to make brownfields faster. It makes it a little harder to appeal a housing project. And it's, I guess that's just as much as I'll say about that. It also adds, the Senate added provisions that had to do with adding citizenship and immigration status as protected classes in housing, and we have retained that. It's in the bill, and there are various provisions that we added. The major issue right now is this, a major issue, I'd say politically, but not necessarily between parties, so much in regions, is how much do you want to restrict the new tax increment financing devices. The bill, there are some advocates, and it came to us from Commerce, pretty much limited to what's called Tier 1 under Act 250, 1A and 1B. Rural interests want to open up Tier 2, but Tier 2 mapping has not been completed yet. So what we did is we added essentially two provisions. A Tier 2 area that could be in Tier 1 if it had the infrastructure that the proposed infrastructure project is aimed at is okay. In other words, it's Tier 1-able if it can have that. And the second is there's a mapping process underway right now that refers to transition or infill areas in Tier 2. These are areas that really are going to be amenable to development, but they haven't been fully mapped. And so those are going to be available in 2028 when we know the mapping will be complete. The other issue was low income. 1 minute?
A minute.
Low income housing and what we do about low income housing. And what we've done is strongly encourage a priority for low income housing. And if anyone wants to talk more about what that really means, talk to me, but I couldn't possibly do it in another 20 seconds.
Any questions? This is, okay.
Yeah.
For Olson, Starkville, thanks very much. My reading of the report from your committee is that it removes much of rural Vermont and Tier 2 from being able to use CHIP Act to build more homes. The Caucus committee had delayed that for 3 years, but it was still possible. Can you provide an explanation of why those areas of rural Vermont are not included to benefit housing?
Right. I think what we did is refine the areas of Tier 2. Tier 2, in the Commerce Committee version, Tier 2 was not included at all now. It was only included in 2028. We added a part of Tier 2 with the help of the Environment Committee now to include Tier 2 areas that, as I said, are Tier 1-able. You know, that the infrastructure would get them there. In 2028, we felt that it was the intention of the Commerce Committee to look at the mapping that was done and then tackle 2027 what areas of Tier 2 would be allowed. I don't think it was ever their intention to just open up Tier 2 wholesale in 2028. It was to give us time to look at the mapping. We felt that that kind of put the onus on the legislature and that we wanted to start by saying now that we would include the areas of Tier 2 that are going to be mapped as transition or infill areas. And that's defined as areas of existing or planned commercial, office, mixed-use development, residential uses, either adjacent to planned growth or village area, or a new standalone transition or infill area, and served by or planned for public water or wastewater. And we felt that's a pretty good definition. And if it's being mapped, some of it's mapped already, if it's being mapped now, this was a good way of tackling.
Speaking, talking about
microphone.
legislative intent is always a little difficult, of course. And I'll just say that as one member, I voted for the House Commerce provision because it would, after 3 years, allow housing, CHIP housing in much more rural.
This bill still has a long way to go, as Mark said. It's in Ways and Means, it's just for appropriations. So follow it closely and we'll report on it again before it comes to the floor. Everyone have a great week. Thank you.